Welcome to Taking Care of Business on News Talk 1180 KERN for the best in Saturday Talk Radio at 1 o'clock and on 1230 KGEO at 10 o'clock Saturday and for the best in Wednesday Talk Radio on 1410 KERI, the Christian station. We are now on 1000 KKIM in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and also on the Internet on knookmedia.com, serving Richmond, Oakland, and the San Francisco Bay Area. Your host is Clay Koerner, and I'm Marty Pay. Our producer is Greg Held. Hey, Clay, you missed a great show last week with our old friend Eric Blem, the author of SEAL Team 6.
It's not that I wasn't sleeping. I just wasn't here.
That's true. You were busy working, making money, being the capitalists that we are.
Making a presentation in Las Vegas on Obamacare to a group there.
Oh, were you really?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't realize you were making a presentation.
Yes.
On your favorite subject, Obamacare.
Obamacare.
In the second half, we had a gentleman who wrote a newly published book about his uncle, who was shot down in Korea. Jim Eskel wrote a book called Unforgotten Hero. But before we introduce today's guests, I want to talk a little bit about one of next week's guests. Now, obviously, Clay and I are going to start getting into healthcare quite a bit. But we do have a guest next week that I'm really, really looking forward to. JFK, C.S. Lewis, and Alexis Huxley all died on the same day 50 years ago, November 22nd, 1963. Peter Kreeft wrote a dynamite book talking about the three of them meeting in the clouds and discussing what happens next. The book's called Between Heaven and Hell, and Peter's our guest next week, so I'm looking forward to that on the 50th anniversary of the assassination and the death of these three very, very famous men. But today in the second half, we have Dr. Kerry Bulls from Healing Word Ministries. But now by phone, we have a very special guest talking about a special initiative he's trying to get on the ballot. Author of Politics, Inc., and a very successful businessman here in California, John Cox. John, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Thanks, Marty and Clay. Great to be with you both.
Well, before we get started, I need to do a disclaimer because we have an excellent reporter in Bakersfield at the Bakersfield, California, named John Cox. When Marty first told me you were coming on, I thought it was going to be John from California.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know there was a reporter named John Cox.
Does a great job.
Oh, okay.
But this is a different John Cox.
This is a different John Cox. Yeah, and this gentleman, John, I'm going to have to quiz you a little bit about this. Looking at your bio, I mean, you've really been a Republican activist for a long time. You're originally from the Chicago area.
Yes.
And you served as the president of the Cook County Republican Party?
Correct, 2004.
Wow. I mean, that's the same Cook County that, we're looking at the 50th anniversary of JFK's assassination. And, I'm reading several books like everybody else is about the subject right now. And everybody talks about how Mayor Daley in Cook County, used the old vote early and vote often routine in Cook County to
whether you're dead or alive.
Yeah.
Whether you're dead or alive, absolutely. I'm a veteran of trying to fight political corruption in the den of it. Although there are obviously other places around, like Louisiana, New Jersey, other places, but Chicago's pretty celebrated, especially with the current occupant of the White House.
Yeah, and in 1960, with Daley trying to get Kennedy over the wire. It actually took a day to cook the books before they could announce what the results were in Cook County. It was kind of interesting.
Those were the good old days, weren't they?
Yeah, and the only other place, oddly enough, just by coincidence, that happened to have the same problem that day was Texas, Lyndon Johnson State. What a coincidence.
Well, in a nice segue, we can also all say that 50 years later, we still have political corruption, and we still need to deal with it right here in California.
That's true. Now, when you were working at Cook County as the head of the Republican Party there, you were helping Housing Secretary Jack Kemp on his presidential run?
I was on his National Steering Committee.
Wow. Okay, and then you were one of the original members of Club for Growth with Larry Kudlow and Steve Forbes, who's been a guest on our show before.
Oh, yeah. That was an outgrowth of the Kemp campaign. Steve Moore of the Wall Street Journal is an old friend of mine, and he was the first director of the Club for Growth.
For what it's worth, I just want you to know that after Steve Forbes was on the show, he sent us beautiful ties. So, for whatever that's worth.
Are you hinting?
Don't expect that from me, I tell you. I'm devoting most of my resources to this initiative I'm working on.
But you're from Chicago. I could expect something like that.
Not really.
That's good, Clay. I like that.
You also ran for president.
Yeah, I did. I had a friend of mine from Iowa, and we were both pretty upset about what George Bush was doing to the Republican brand, and I went out there and gave a few speeches about Republicans staying true to principles of fiscal discipline, and I got standing ovations, and I kept up with it, and unfortunately, I appealed very strongly to the Republican base, but the media didn't like the fact that I wasn't an elected official, so they decided that I wasn't a qualified candidate. A community organizer and part-time constitutional law professor was, though, so that's behind now.
Well, I don't know if you follow California politics at all, but the Republican Party's in tremendous trouble in California. We just don't have...
I wouldn't disagree with that, and I think a large part of that is because of the control of the other party, and part of that is the subject of my initiative that we're working on, and that is the campaign funders in California have a tremendous stranglehold on the state legislature.
Yeah, it's crazy. Our guest by phone is John Cox, author, politician, and very successful businessman.
An attorney, is that correct?
I'm an attorney and CPA. I'm also a registered investment advisor, and I own apartments mostly. That's my primary business is apartment management. I have several thousand apartments under management and ownership in Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin.
Wow, so you've done well for yourself, John. I'm looking at your bio here, and it's very impressive. So tell us a little bit about your ballot proposal and what you're trying to accomplish here in California.
Well, I think the thing about California, just like a lot of states actually, and frankly the federal government, is that the campaign funders have a stranglehold over legislation. And why? Because candidates need campaign funds to run, especially in a state like California, which has the largest legislative districts in the world. Not just the country, the world. A state Senate district in California has 1 million people in it. And when you have to appeal and campaign to that many people, you need to raise a barrel full of money. And people like employee unions, big businesses, Indian casinos, trial lawyers, they're all very, very happy to give you money to run your campaign as long as they get something in return. And that's a problem for the state, and it's frankly a problem for the democratic process.
Well, we just had a Democratic legislator in California that already got his return. He got $88,000 back for supporting specific bills. So corruption runs rampant, not just in the federal, but in the state governments as well.
Well, I think what you're probably referring to is Calderon, but I mean, there's other things, and frankly, it's legal corruption. It's hard to believe, but it's legalized bribery because you can make political contributions or you can make independent expenditures on behalf of somebody to affect what they vote on. And that's considered legal, and it's a bedrock of our system, but it's wrong. And frankly, the result has been is that the public is basically turned off. I mean, they don't register, and most people don't even vote. And the reason they give is they feel their vote doesn't matter. The people who write the checks in Sacramento, the ones that get their way, the average taxpayer, the average hard worker, has absolutely no contact with their political leadership, and frankly, no influence.
Well, it's funny, John, in certain areas it's even worse than others. I know up here in Kern County where we are, our politicians are pretty accessible, but I know when I was in Los Angeles and I had a radio show down there, you couldn't get a hold of anybody. So it's the larger the area, the tougher it is to get a hold of them.
Well, and it's not just getting a hold of people, Marty. It's actually having them listen and act upon what the people want. I mean, at the end of the day, it's how they vote in the state legislature on bills that are introduced. And when it comes down to it, any attempt at a reform of education, energy, utilities, land use, agriculture, water usage, any of these things, it's the people who want government to spend money on their favorite uses that really get the attention of legislators, and a lot of times the public isn't really part of the equation.
Well, okay, John, you probably know this number, but what does it cost on average to run, say, an assembly campaign or a state senate campaign here?
Oh my God, it can be in the millions of dollars, and
Wow.
and not only that, it's a full-time effort involving a couple of years of just constant campaigning and constant fundraising, and most people who have lives don't want to do that. I mean, let's face it. I mean, people who have real lives and real businesses and families and social lives say, well, the heck with that. I'm going to continue to live a life. I'm not going to give up my entire life to be a state legislator. So who do we get? We get the careerists. We get the people who devote their entire life to political work, and they really don't have much of a connection to real life and what real life and real work is like.
Well, and plus you're looking at, like you say, special interests that turn around and, they've got the deep pockets so they can afford to pay for these elections. And, that's who the assembly people and the state senate people, unfortunately, are obligated to.
Well, and of course, it's writ large with the public sector unions. There's 2 million public sector workers in the state. They pay $1,000 a year in dues, roughly, and that's $2 billion a year. That's a lot of money, and very few individuals or groups can fight that big a pool of resources. And the key is to try to get that money to be a lot less powerful, which is what the neighborhood legislature does, which is why this is an idea that's basically sweeping the state right now and getting a lot of people interested.
Well, John, when we come back from the break, let's talk more about the initiative. We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.